Welcome to our episode 6 of the Lay of the Land podcast from the Scottish Land Commission. I am your host, Calum Maclean. For this episode, I'm joined by two first-generation young farmers who are breaking the mould and trying alternative ways of farming to create a self-sustaining model which allows them to truly live off their land. In this podcast, you'll hear all about how Rosa and James are taking a small piece of land in the northeast and learning how to grow food for themselves and also for their local community. Along the way, they're also helping people, from local passers-by to folk from all over the world, learn what to do and how to do it via social media. From friendly goats to YouTube sensations, Rosa and James live an inspirational life in the Aberdeenshire countryside, and I certainly learned a lot about what is possible with a small piece of land. Welcome, please, Rosa and James from Taponoth Farm. You guys are first generation young farmers. Tell us about your farm in Aberdeenshire. Taponoth, am I saying it right?
That's it, that's well the done. One. Yeah, it's quite often mispronounced as Tap of the North or something, but it's Taponoth. And that's the hill fort that sits above us. So there's a Pictish hill fort that's on top of the hill that we live on, which was inhabited about 2,000 years ago. We just decided to take Taponoth as our farm name because, well, we didn't have one, and we just thought it was a great geographical marker for the business as well.
And what is your farm actually like? You know, if I came and had a look at it, walked around, what would I be seeing?
Well, you'd see a lot of trees because we've been very busy planting trees over the last 10 years, following agroforestry principles. You'd find yourself in the market garden, which has been our main form of income for the last 6 years. We've been growing vegetables, organic method, but not certified organic, and supplying a veg box for the last wee while. Mm-hmm. We've got dairy goats. Rosa milks goats every day and makes cheese. We've got a gaggle of geese. We've got hens.
Huge mix.
Yeah. Everything integrated into the whole area. We rotate the animals around grazing and through the trees. So we're trying to mimic natural ecosystem function as much as we can, going on the sort of ecosystem disguised as a farm. So producing as much from the farm as possible, working with nature as much as possible to return a surplus and make that into an enterprise.
And how did you both get into farming? Is it something that, you know, you'd always wanted to do?
Well, for me, no, actually. I'd never thought that was the direction I was going to go in. I went down more the conservation route, studied zoology at university, and so I love being outdoors, love nature, but I'd never connected nature and kind of growing food. I think I saw them, well, as most people do, unfortunately, that growing food is almost just, well, part the destruction of nature in some ways, you know, clearing forests to grow grain or things like that. So for me, farming, as I had known about it, was never very desirable as a job. And it was only later on during my, while I was doing my degree, that I learned about permaculture. And basically, instead of seeing kind of conservation and biodiversity conservation as seeing it as necessary to essentially keep people out of an area in order to conserve it and steward it and keep it healthy. Instead, this was this other way of looking at things where we're part of that ecosystem and you can use your kind of human intelligence and design to work with and improve an ecosystem so that it produces food for people and all of the biodiversity around. So there's this kind of like Garden of Eden kind of concept, which almost does sound too good to be true, but it's not. It is possible. I discovered that actually kind of in the tropics, where it really does look like a Garden of Eden. And there's less examples as such, really, in temperate climates, but it's still obviously totally possible. It's something that we are enjoying exploring here. So whilst we are farmers, again, we wouldn't be probably not, neither of us would say we're the farmers that we might have pictured a long time ago if we'd have thought, do we want to be a farmer? Yeah.
And I guess I never saw myself getting into food production. I was, in my late teens, I traveled to Australia, and that's when I first came across permaculture, this term that Rosa mentioned. It was a form of ecological design and sustainable agriculture. And it was there that kind of opened up my eyes to some of the problems associated with modern day conventional agriculture. But gave me the insight and the skills to start thinking about how to grow my own food and take responsibility for my own needs. That's the prime directive of permaculture design, is to take responsibility for your needs and that of your family. Yeah, I really came here to the farm 10 years ago. We're just celebrating our 10-year anniversary, to set the place up as a small holding, small farm, to take care of our own needs, see what we could grow in our climate, but also to set the place up as a demonstration site. As Rosa was saying, there's not, at that time, there weren't that many places in the UK focusing on regenerative agriculture and permaculture. So it was really important to me to set the place up as a demonstration site, to make lots of mistakes and then get people to come and see those mistakes and take things away from that. And then that just led into, myself wanting to think, okay, let's see if I can put these ecological principles really to practice. Instead of just demonstrating and going through education, let's see if we can actually produce food and make a contribution to the local economy that way.
Rosa and James, you guys are obviously hugely invested and interested in the land around you. How important do you think it is that other people, that, no matter who we are, we take an interest in the land around us?
Very, very important. Yeah, I think it is kind of it's kind of how you find your sense of rootedness, isn't it? Whether you, like James mentioned, we don't technically own this land. I don't think it's necessarily about literally owning land. It's about feeling that you are either a steward or in some way connected to land. I think it's obviously just very deep in all of us, I would reckon, that's kind of necessary. So I think the more people can take an interest in that, they can find out, hopefully, the most appropriate way for them to, and what the possibilities are as well for them to be able to get connected to the land around them.
I agree. Yeah.
You guys are much younger, maybe, than the demographic, the kind of average age of farmers. You guys bring that down a fair bit, I guess. So we look at the future of farming, the future of land in Scotland and how it's used. Do you think the demographic of landowners as they are right now, does that have an effect? What effect does that have on the future of farming, for example, do you think?
No, I was going to say that, I mean, obviously, the average age of farmers at the moment is quite old. But one of the issues is that obviously the norm, which used to be that their children would then take over, that's become less and less likely, it seems, just because of how, it's a complex situation, isn't it? But essentially the kind of income potential, all the difficulties that come from farming the way that most people are farming. So there does seem to need to be a change in how we're seeing that, to try and encourage young people to farm. But then, what we call farming has to change too, I think, anyway, to do with the climate and a lot of different things. So trying to make money in different ways whilst also thinking about the environment and thinking about the land size as well, for certain, these huge areas of land managed by very few people, even if it is just it. And I just mean, for example, a farm, if it's one large farm managed by just one farmer, I think, the scale of things need to change a little bit as well. If we could encourage more people somehow back onto land by dividing things up a little bit better, if that were possible, that would be fab.
You said that you guys don't physically own the land yourselves. Does it matter that you don't? Is it how you use it? Is that more important, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we feel very secure because it is a family farm. So, we know that we're safe here, that we're not going to get kicked out.
Yeah.
I hope we're not.
There needs to be, there still needs to be some sort of security if you're invested on a bit of land. If you're living there, for example, and you put a lot of your time and effort in, there needs to, it makes sense that this is family land. So there's different structures, I think, depending on what the situation is for different people.
Yeah. So whether it's ownership or whether it's just security, because we definitely know other people who have had to rent land and they either get told they have to leave a bit sooner than they realize they could. They also maybe can't put a design into play that is for the future because it's not their land and they know maybe they've got a 2, 3, 5 year lease or whatever. So, that kind of puts away the idea of planting any perennials, any trees or anything like that. So they maybe just have to focus on grazing or annuals like we've been doing in the market garden.
Yeah.
So, it makes it, a lot of what we're doing here is planning for the next generation, or if not the generation after that. We're planting food crops that are going to be in the ground a long time. This transition that we're making from the market garden of growing annuals, which, that of their nature just sort of grow 1 year and die and have to be reseeded. We're planting all these fruit or nut or timber species of trees, which are going to be in the ground for a long, long time. And that's really important to us, is that future planning within agriculture of thinking, okay, how can we make a truly regenerative system that's going to look after itself once we're gone and isn't going to need our inputs. So if farms could stay in families, then you could have that regenerative concept of kind of future planning your farm a lot more. Yeah. So it's very difficult for people who haven't got the access. So it's a difficult one. Land ownership is a massive subject.
Yeah.
Of course, the demographic around here of landowners, we've got a massive absentee owners of the estates that are around us who live in London and come up now and again to the estates around us, and the population of people crofting and farming is very small now compared to how populated it used to be. Then you've got the large-ish farmers. I mean, nothing like down in England, obviously, but still quite large tracts of land. Then you've got people like us who've got crofts and small holdings, and then kind of people who have an acre for a pony, and then down to people who kind of commute to the city and want a big garden around them. So it's quite a varied demographic, but a lot of it is obviously owned and privately owned.
Mostly by the first one.
Yes, by the kind of estates and things. So very difficult for people to get a foot in the door and know where to start. It's one of the biggest questions that we get asked from our volunteers or interns is, how do I do this? We offer farm tours once a month in the growing season. So we walk groups of people around the farm for a few hours, and there's often people who are just gagging to get out and do this and to get a bit of land and to grow food or start a small enterprise. And that access to land is a massive wall.
It's like the barrier, basically.
What do you tell people when they ask, how can I do it as well?
Yeah, I know. I often sort of start by saying, obviously, we're very lucky. We're working with family, and we're very privileged to have that.
You do see different examples of it. So we are an example of, a possibility that works for some people, and we have bumped into some people that say, we're actually going to do the same kind of setup as you. One of their parents or something like that within a duo, or it doesn't have to be a couple, and the parent, has their own home because of their age. And that either already has a bit of land on it that they're not using, or they decide to move as a family and share in the assets, being that the younger generation have the strength to do the work on the land, and the older person has the money basically to be able to at least purchase something. Because as obviously we're an example of, doesn't have to be huge or anything, or even prime farmland or anything.
Point. I remember us discussing that and thinking, it's...
You don't have to buy a farm to start farming. You really just have to learn what to look for on a bit of land and think, how can you work with that? There are different ways of looking at it to start with. So there is that as a possibility for some people. And then, of course, communal kind of ownership of things, coming together with groups of people.
Yeah, I mean, there's more and more community sort of growing. There's more and more community growing projects. A lot of that seems to be more down around cities and things. We've seen, we've got a lot of friends who have been setting up initiatives around Glasgow and different parts of more populated areas. So it is a lot harder out here in the country. I mean, that's been a bit of a, that's made our business quite a bit harder too, is just because of how rural we are. But we're giving advice to people looking for land. I think making people realize and saying, well, you don't have to go out and buy a farm to be able to produce food. I think that's a really good one, that once we sort of we've got like this, when we, because this isn't prime agricultural land here at all. It's very varied. There's a couple of fields which have got some really good soil, but it's got a lot of wetland on it as well, and it's probably regarded as not the best piece of land, and yet we've managed to grow a huge amount of food here and supply up to 50 families from just 1/4 of an acre. The market garden's tiny. So I think, educating people and making them realize, like, you don't have to look for that large bit of typical farmland. Starting to kind of look around and see what else is happening. Is there anyone in your local area that has started a community project or has a piece of land that they can maybe share? I mean, share farming is not something we've had any experience with, but definitely seems to be an interesting concept where maybe the landowner has got a spare couple of acres and it's not always this case, but often the landowner will put up 100% of the sort of costs, the capital for setting up a project, and the person they're sharing it with will put up 100% of the labor, and then the profit is shared 50-50. There's a lot of people out there that they've got a lot of land and they're not really doing anything with it. So that could be a possibility.
It's obviously a big topic in rural places, land ownership, who owns the land. You're talking about some of the different people in your own area. Do you think it's something that is relevant in urban places, that people who live in cities should be taking interest into?
Definitely. I mean, that's where all the food is going to. So into the cities, into the higher populated places. So I think it's makes a lot of sense just with regards to energy use to try and produce food in and around the cities. The suburbs have got a huge potential as a place to be able to grow food, because actually there's quite a bit of land there,
Yeah, totally.
Suburban gardens are often quite large. They're also very close to the city with regards to shops and restaurants. And again, this is something we've seen done very well in North America and places like that. In Australia, the average suburban back garden is 1/4 of an acre. It's a huge amount of space. And I know that's different here, but we definitely still should be looking at food production and how to do that within more populated spots. And it's definitely happening. Like I said, there's some great examples out there, whether that's Locavore in Glasgow and now in Edinburgh, and different community orchards that are popping up in some of the more populated parts of Scotland. And it's really great. I think that's definitely happening a lot more than community land ownership within the countryside. I've always heard you can't make a living from farming, you just can't do it. And about 6 or 7 years ago, there was quite an influx of people from the States and Canada, where a lot of this stuff is practiced quite a lot, talking about earning quite good money from small-scale farming, market gardening and growing better, not bigger, kind of concepts like that of smart design and using hand tools, but without stepping back to peasantry and using technology. And that was really a boost for me to sort of get the market garden built. And that was before Rosa and I met, actually. So I was on my own at that point. Discovered that we can make a living from small scale farming, a modest one, but we live a very modest life, so we didn't have to earn huge amounts of money from that.
Can you tell me how you use the land in a productive way? What kind of things what are you thinking about when you're planting something new or introducing new trees to the farm?
Well, yeah, it's a good question because we've already been talking about this blurring the line between conservation and agriculture, or blurring the line between ecology and agriculture. And so I guess that's always in our mind is, how can we design and implement in a way that's going to benefit the ecology of the farm and not reduce that or degrade the ecology that's already there. But also, how can we design it and set something up that is going to potentially bring us in an income, a return of surplus.
Or at the very least, feed us.
Yeah.
So we don't need to go out.
Which is, of course, very important. Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of what we already have happening on the farm, like I said, we keep goats, but because of all the red tape and things, we're not bothering to try and like set up a dairy or anything like that.
Yeah.
But that home dairy, stops us having to go to the shop all the time. And
exactly. There's loads of kind of, obviously there's all these products that come from the goat's milk, cheese, and obviously milk and things. But then you have byproducts like whey, which in an industrial setting or larger scale setting are pollutants. But for us, it's a brilliant fertilizer. It can, feed some of our other animals. So all of these things, though they might not be directly for sale, they do influence the fertility of the farm and basically keep all of the systems going and fed and reduce our need for inputs from the outside. So everything has at least an indirect effect on our kind of farm enterprise, which really the kind of money earner so far has been the market garden. However, moving more towards perennial crops, tree crops.
With the tree planting, like I said, that's been happening over the last 10 years. The previous owners planted a lot of trees, a lot of broadleaf native trees, and it was great because they were, planted to block the wind and things. So we haven't had to focus on sort of the native trees so much, but we're looking at more high yielding productive trees that might bring us in an income. Again, we're only 8 acres, so it's quite hard for us to set up systems that are going to be ecologically viable necessarily.
Economic.
Sorry, you're right. It's hard for us to set up systems that are always going to be economically viable because of our size. So we've always got to kind of decide what's it worth doing, what's it worth putting our energy, our time, our resources into to set up.
You mentioned the previous owners there. Can you tell us about the process of acquiring the land that you actually work on now?
We don't own the land. It's my mum's land. So I actually came here. We made a family decision 10 years ago to move here together, me and my mum. Which I know is isn't heard of that much, not anymore. Family farms and making that decision used to be something that I think was a lot more frequent. But we both wanted to live in the country. I wanted to set up this demonstration site in this small, very small working farm. That was me in my late 20s, and of course there was no way I could have afforded to buy 8 acres in Aberdeenshire. My mum owns the farm, and then we basically run the business, look after the land.
She also does quite a lot with all of that as well.
She's in her mid-70s, and we can't stop her from working every day outside. She contributes a lot still. We're very lucky because of that. Yeah.
So what are the pros and cons about working and running a small farm, as you call it? Do you have to get a lot of help in? Are you learning as you're going? What's the trickiest things about it?
We take volunteers, have taken volunteers, and that's definitely a part of it. But I wouldn't say it's like integral to the work. For example, the market garden is still something that we would run, the two of us, and wouldn't rely on volunteers as such. However, the diversity of the farm does mean there's a huge diversity of jobs. There's lots of different you put on many different hats, as we often say, and that's really great because you never get bored. But also, it does mean that there is often a lot to do, a lot you're trying to juggle, just to try and get a lot of systems in place as you're building up the farm, especially such a mixed one. So yeah, it does require like a bit of help from the outside and a bit of extra, a few extra hands.
Yeah, we're registered with Workaway, which is a volunteer organization. So we take people from all around the world. We have been for the last 10 years. We've had, people from everywhere coming and staying between sort of 10 days to 3 weeks. We've also hosted internships. So we've worked with 2 universities to host students here who are studying everything from environmental science to sort of food and health and things. So they've come and had placements with us. We've worked a lot with local people. In fact, we're taking volunteer-wise, we're mostly taking people from the local area now because we've managed to build up our profile that people are aware of what we're doing and aware that we're here. So it's much, we prefer the idea of taking people locally because they can drive in or just come and go when they feel like helping or when we need the help.
That's a great indicator, actually, of the fact, I think, that aside from that people just know about us more now, I think it's also that more people are interested in this area, about learning about working the land in this way, basically, and how does it work and how can it work for them, potentially, either people that are looking for land themselves or have just been lucky enough to acquire some land. So that's really positive for us because it's like a trend. It's definitely, I think COVID has also actually changed that because a lot of people now are able to work from home, and so they're able to move out of a city, for example. So there's lots of these things that none of us predicted, but actually
it's also got people thinking about food a lot more.
Resilience.
We had decided to upscale the market garden a little bit in 2020. Before February 2020 when everyone started to notice something was happening. But we got a lot more inquiries that year, the first year of lockdown and everything, for our veg boxes and produce, because I think people just started thinking about food security a lot more, which was really interesting.
Also, there was a lot of issues to do with kind of supply chains of things that there still are. So again, it was this really nice reminder. Well, obviously it wasn't positive in lots of ways for lots of people, but there was this nice reminder at points for us that with the systems that are in place here on this farm, we require very little input from anywhere except for maybe our neighbour who brings along some straw, for example, sometimes. But for us, suddenly realising that, well, we don't like to use the term self-sufficiency because that can seem quite insular, but in its sense, as a business, we were pretty self-sufficient and we were able to run, well, obviously almost better because even more people wanted to buy food locally. But aside from that, we didn't have issues with needing to buy things in from further afield. So it really did champion the kind of local food movement, which was really positive.
Going back to the work, how do you get things done and work with, as well as taking volunteers and the interns. Sometimes we have to go away. We leave the farm very, very rarely, but if we do have to go away for a few days, then we've paid for someone to come in and to milk the goats and to water the polytunnel and let the animals out and put the animals away. So that's meant training someone up locally who was interested in learning. Someone who grew up on a much larger farm locally, but was actually more interested in the small scale and the kind of the organic side of things. Yeah,
she said she'd been driving past since forever. She lives really locally, and just one day after kind of hearing quite an inspirational talk, I think somewhere, she decided she was actually going to call in and see whether she could volunteer here for a bit. And now she's like working on a local organic farm, and she's working on her family farm and trying to kind of push slightly different ways of doing things, which is quite cool.
How important is it for you guys to, engage your local community? Because I imagine, is it something that was quite new when you started the market garden and selling the vegetables locally? I mean, was that something that was done in the area before you did it?
Within our area, I mean, we were only focusing on about a 15-mile radius from the farm. There wasn't anything growing with that, like ecologically grown vegetables. We use the term ecologically grown because we're not organic certified, so we can't say we're organic. Like we've been growing organic veg, we have to use a different term because of the nature of the veg box. So we, rather than delivering our veg boxes door to door, we decided that we would use drop-off or pick-up points in our local towns. So, for instance, Huntly, which is 12 miles away, we would drive to Huntly, and before the season started, we would sort of find somebody to work with. And we've worked with local arts organizations, we've worked with local shops, we've found someone who has a garage that we can leave the boxes in. So doing that really enabled us to get to know the community quite well and work, and hopefully taking those veg boxes into the businesses means that they'll get some traffic coming to their shop too. When our customers come up to pick up their veg, hopefully they'll spend some money in their shop too.
It's a really good way to connect with your local community, obviously, producing food. It's like our favourite thing about it, is that connection. But of course there is, it's not like there's, although we've, have had great support from our local community. At the same time, the market isn't huge, as in, we've always had to work quite hard to fill all of the spots on our CSA, which as in to find all of our customers to buy the veg that we can produce. And so whilst the ones that we do find are super passionate and positive, it's still quite, it's clear that it's not something that's the norm, for example. And so there's a whole change needs to take place anyway and it is changing, but the kind of food culture and even just the way that we buy our food, the kind of freshness of it and the price of it. Yeah. So there's a lot of education that needs to happen alongside just producing. You're not just, the way that we're doing it anyway, you're not just producing, you're also trying to kind of, educate, but just open people's eyes to a different way of doing things, for example, a different way of buying their food, of eating their food. That's always going to be a challenge, I think.
I think we've always wanted to be really transparent with our customers, which we refer to as members of the farm. The business framework that we use for selling the veg box is called Community Supported Agriculture, or CSA. And with a CSA, there's various ways that you can run it. We're a producer-led, so we make all the decisions on the farm, what seed we buy, how many members we want to get, the price of our vegetables. You can be a community-led CSA where you have a little group of people to make the decisions and take care of the work. But we decided to go with
we made the
decisions. Yeah. And so, the concept behind CSA is that, to use the sort of tagline from the CSA website, is that the risks and rewards are both shared within seasonal farming. So we ask our members to buy a share of the produce. So rather than, we supply our vegetables in a box, but the box is just a way of moving the vegetables from A to B, really. The idea is that they sign up at the start of the year. Like this time of year, we actually get all our income coming in for the full season, which is very short. We can only manage a 20 to 22 week season, delivery season here. But all our members sign up in February, so that allows us to know how many people we've got, which allows us to know how much seed to buy or how many bags of compost, etc. Just really gives us security, and that's what's lacking a lot of the time within agriculture as a whole, but definitely agriculture that really relies on the weather and not using chemical inputs.
It's a brilliant model, and if we could apply that to farming in general in different ways, large scale
security, and the transparency and working with community. So that's really allowed us to sort of educate to our members who obviously are already showing some degree of interest and an understanding of seasonal farming or wanting to support a small business like us, because they've got to, that doesn't suit everyone having to pay up at the start of the year. We're quite tough. If you pay up, you pay up. You can't drop in and out. We ran the veg box like that for the first couple of years, and people drop in and out of veg boxes frequently. So one minute you think you're going to be able to sell all these veggies, and then suddenly you've got a few people drop out, and there's a big hole in it, and that's not great for us, and it produces food waste. So with CSA, there's definitely less food waste issues because the understanding is that at the beginning of the year, as a share member of our farm, you're probably going to get a little bit less in your veg box, and as we go into the middle of the summer, you're going to get quite a bit more, and then towards the end, you get a little bit less, but it evens out, and that's why it's like buying a share of the farm, really.
And it definitely shows you as well what it is like producing food, because of course that's totally hidden when you're buying food from the supermarket. It's not clear what's in season, whether there's a time of year when there tends to be more growing or not. So there's really no way for people to know unless they decide to go and specifically learn about that. So it's quite a nice way of showing that just by what comes in your box and how much there is, just like you would learn if you were growing your own garden.
Well, that's what we often say, we're looking for employment at the start of the season through our social media. We're like, please employ us as your farmers again this season, and come and meet us and get to meet the people who are growing your veg. And the supply chain is just so short. It's, so people who haven't got a bit of land to grow their own veg, think of us as your garden and we'll grow the veg for you.
Now, you guys do use social media quite well. I was looking at your Instagram, and one thing that jumped out to me personally, actually, was I saw you had some goats, and you've been talking about your goats, because when I was very young, we had a couple of goats. My sister's first word was actually Abba, Abba, which the goat was called Albert. My mum would call it every morning, Albert.
Albert, that's a nice
that was one thing that stuck with me. But you also use YouTube really well, and you're quite prolific on YouTube, uploading loads of videos. Yeah. How important is it that you use these platforms to, spread your message and connect to a wider audience, not just within the 15 miles around you, and also create an interest in how we use the land? Social media has been very important. I think it's something, in this day and age, we've really got to get a handle on how to use it to promote ourselves and to market our businesses. Facebook was the first place we used really to advertise the veg box. I didn't, I had the need to start earning an income. Again, this was before Rosa and I met. I had a need to start earning an income and thought, right, well, I've been growing vegetables for myself for the last 15 years. Let's see if I can do this commercially. Is there a need for that? And I'd already developed a Facebook page for Tapping Off Farm as a project. We'd been running courses in permaculture design for a few years, so we'd already built up quite a good following, an international following, because those courses often attract an international following. So we already had a Facebook page, and I just put a post of some nice veggies I'd grown the year before and said, would this interest anyone? I didn't know whether we were going to do a veg box, whether I'd get a market stall. I just wanted to see what kind of interest, and the response was great. So there was obviously a need for that. So Facebook sort of works quite well with groups. We have a Facebook group for our VegBox members, so that if you signed up as a VegBox member for the season, you could join the Facebook group.
You could post pictures of what you've cooked.
Yeah, people love it. They're always sort of saying, we just got this lovely bag of kale from Tap Farm. This is what we made with it. Or we're trying to encourage people to swap vegetables. If they don't like their broad beans, they can swap it with somebody else. Because like I said, once you're kind of signed up with us for the season, that's you with us. So if you don't like something in your veg box, we're encouraging you to sort of speak to your other members and trade and things. So that Facebook group really helped with that.
Facebook's it's quite a kind of local social media, isn't it? It's like how people, since there's less actual physical meeting places locally, Facebook's become that. And but then things like YouTube and Instagram and everything, that seems to reach more the global audience. But yeah, across the
definitely.
world, all different climates.
Instagram seems to have a very good community of other small growers, and is great for showing photographs and promoting yourself that way, we found. And then YouTube's more actually our most recent form of social media that we've embraced. We've been uploading dedicated videos on there for 3 years now. And that came about just by thinking, hey, let's just make a little montage of 6 months. We did a video called 6 months and 6 minutes and just chucked it up on our channel, which we had an account, so we just threw it up on there, and it did quite well. And we'd been watching a lot of vlogs, a lot of homesteading, because it's done a lot, these YouTube videos about homesteading and things. It's much more common in America, it was at the time. So we'd been watching a lot anyway, and followed quite a few people who wander around their farm with a camera in one hand while they're trying to water the garden with the other, or feed their cows or whatever. And we thought, oh, let's give that a go.
Yeah.
And we just started to really enjoy doing it. And I think the main reason we enjoy making those vlogs is because it's a record for us. It's a way of remembering what we've done. And we can already look back on over the last 3 years and go, all right, that's where we had that. Or that's what we did.
Like a diary, basically, which, video log or whatever.
But then we realized that there was a community behind it. To me, it was always like where to go to when you need to fix your sink or something, go and watch a YouTube video. But, there's a lot of people out there that regularly watch our vlogs and wait for the next upload, and comments coming in, and then those viewers are all chatting amongst themselves and sharing ideas and things about farming, or a lot of them obviously don't farm or even have a garden, but get great enjoyment watching the videos. To be able to kind of live through that.
Yes, I've been really amazingly surprised by how positive the effect has been of the videos, and it's a really nice feeling when you hear. And this actually happens quite regularly, where someone says, "Oh, because I was watching your videos, I've taken the leap and decided to start my own market garden or whatever." And and that's really nice, because I think a lot of what we do want to kind of make people realize that things are possible, and if we can do it, anyone can do it. So it's about trying to make things seem achievable, and that making mistakes is okay, for example, and also I guess promoting a way of living that is as sustainable or environmentally sound as possible. So I think I think that's been such a lovely unexpected part of the YouTube channel, is actually feeling that effect kind of rippling across. Yeah,
we've had messages from people saying that from watching our videos, it's given them the courage to start a market garden in Cornwall, or we had one from the Yucatan Peninsula, and all around the world.
Like, we would never have obviously had an effect on that person were it not for these videos. So, and it's just really nice.
But there's a lot of work. We have to, there's about 10 hours of editing for each vlog that I do. And
you enjoy it.
I do enjoy it. Yeah, the editing is the side I like the most. The filming can be quite hard because you're trying to get jobs done whilst also wanting to show people what you're up to. We don't make the videos that we make are definitely more fly on the wall, kind of showing our day on the farm. They're not really how-tos. There's definitely a lot of information in the videos for people to watch, and obviously that is working. But you've got to be quite dedicated to sort of sit through our day and to extract what you need for your own project or whatever, rather than a quick fix how-to. It's good fun making them.
Looking at your own experiences and your own farm, how do you see the way that we own and the way that we use our land changing to help tackle climate change? Obviously such a big issue now, but also in future.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of there's obviously a lot of different ways. Approaches. Yeah.
One is obviously the more we can produce our food locally, the less kind of food miles that there are. That's an obvious one. So the more small kind of mixed farms you can have in one area, the more of that area's food you can produce, the more diversity of food you can produce. So yeah, I think that would be a great start.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of like what we were saying earlier about that thing about conservation versus agriculture. It's that thing of like, you don't have to have just one or the other. If we're talking about carbon capture through trees, well, why not think about those trees as well and grazing between them, and the variety of the different types of produce that you can get from those trees. Why not try and increase diversity and capture carbon and feed people all at once? That would be excellent.
It's all very possible. Yeah. I mean, it's all very detailed and can be quite a lot to undertake mentally if you're trying to design a farm that's going to meet all that criteria. So I can see why some of the approaches that are either getting recommended to us or some of the approaches that people are using are quite simplistic in their approach. We're lucky because we're on a small scale. We can do quite detailed approaches to our the way that we farm, how integrated it is, how many different forms of livestock we have on this small.
We can try things out, and experiment a bit more.
And we've got a relative cushion for if it goes wrong.
But I often think that's where we need to kind of meet, because that's what small scale can help with larger scale. Because if we can experiment with things and see what works, maybe what doesn't work in terms of this area, for example, then you can take that risk that we've taken and apply it on a larger scale, maybe.
Do you see what you guys do could be done on larger scales, on some of these estates, on bigger areas of land?
Yeah, definitely.
People are doing that.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. We often show what we're doing here and say this can be scaled up, and there's definitely examples of that in the UK and all around the world. Agroforestry systems, everything we do here is a sort of either a small scale version or a demonstration of what can be done, whether that's alley cropping, growing our vegetables between rows of productive trees, whether that's silver pasture, where we're integrating productive trees within grazing so that we're maximizing the yield from that one piece of land. So, I mean, that's really important for us because we've got a small farm, because we've got a small bit of land. We want to make it work. So every acre has got to be, working as hard as it can without sort of depleting the soils, without depleting the wildlife. But multifunctional is how we play it here. Definitely everything. We can't just have a field and an area of woodland there, and we mix it all together, and that can definitely be scaled up. We hope to see that happening more and more.
And Rosa, I've got a question for you. Do you have any thoughts about other young women who are looking to get into growing and to get into the same kind of things that you're doing? What advice would you give to someone that came and asked you, how do I do it as well?
To be honest, I think I guess I'm very lucky that I've never felt that any barriers as a woman into getting into what I have, and I just feel very lucky for that. And I guess so the best advice I could give is to just ignore any perceived barriers about what type of job you should have, or anything about what you might be able to achieve as a woman, and just do it, because you'll be able to do it really well. And I think it's kind of natural in all of us, this working with the land, really. So I think it's a great movement for women, in the sense that I think it's to look after and steward a bit of land feels like a brilliant thing to do. Just go for it.
Brilliant. What does the future hold for Tapo North? It's kind of short term, but also long term. I was looking at your social media, which I mentioned earlier, and I saw what looked like a wood-fired bathtub. Am I right? Is that right?
That's just so we can take it easy at the end of the day.
Kick back.
No, that's the wood-fired bathtub. That's part of a new venture that we've started, a new enterprise to diversify slightly on the farm. We're starting up a farm stay. So we have a beautiful shepherd's hut, which is based up at a pond at the top of the property. We've got a beautiful pond with the shepherd's hut at the edge of the pond, and it's got this wood-fired bathtub. And so we're going to be opening this year for people to come and stay. We often get inquiries from people saying, can they come and stay? Or if they've come up for a tour and they've traveled quite far, then they're often looking for somewhere to stay. We really like the agritourism concept which is something that happens certainly more in Europe, where people can come to a farm and see what products are made on the farm and how that farm runs, and then also stay there and enjoy food and local drink and things like that. So that's the sort of concept that we're going with. So that's Tap Retreat, and we've got various Instagrams and things for that side of the business. We're having our first baby in May, so we're going to be the farm is going to be expanding. Yeah, thank you. We're going to be taking a little bit more easy on the market garden side of things this year. We're going to be focusing a lot more on growing food for the house, for the household, for the family, which is something we haven't really done that much together. Yeah. The last 6 years, the focus has been on producing vegetables, and everything leaves the farm and makes its way out into the local community, and we're sort of left with the kind of the sort of bits of salad that we couldn't sell and things like that. So it'd be really nice to focus on a little bit more of home resilience. Yeah. Planting a huge amount of trees. We're planting a lot more fruit trees and nut trees this year, and that's something we're doing every year to look at the whole farm as a sort of edible landscape. Like I was saying earlier, we can't really just devote one field as an orchard, because we also want to have grazing for the goats, and it all kind of is all integrated. So we're working on this design of a forest garden farm, where we're going to be, where we're putting in high yielding trees and shrubs that are going to be bringing us a product within five years, but looking a bit more long term, and planting different nut crops that are going to be producing when we're older, and maybe our kids can benefit from that. Mm-hmm. We're renovating a building. We're just basically putting a roof back on an old barn, but that means we're going to be able to have a lot more dry space, so we can take groups of people who can be in there, because we're wanting to get back into teaching the permaculture design courses next year. So after 6 or 7 years of really just focusing on that immediate area, the 15-mile radius of the farm, and kind of selling the veg boxes and things, which of course we love, we're starting to look back into sort of a bit more of a wider range now, with the accommodation courses, the YouTube channel and things. So it's very exciting. I wish I'd started the market garden a lot sooner. I think I touched on that. I said that you always hear that nowadays it's very difficult to make a good living from agriculture, or it's very difficult, and but I really wish I'd started developing the market garden and just going for it a lot earlier on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I like the kind of order that we've done things in the sense of that I feel like we're progressing, as James kind of alluded to at the end there, about the kind of evolution of what we're kind of producing or doing here on the farm. It's really started more with growing these annuals and things, and that the perennial systems are starting to take over and starting to think about those and the kind of long-term solutions to things, rather than the constant the constant resowing and regrowing of things in the market garden. So I think I quite like the order of things, the way that they've gone, and probably wouldn't change anything.
Brilliant. Well, congratulations in order. Yeah. And I do have one more question. Do you have names? Do the goats have names?
Well, we've got, Mandy is the one that's in kid at the moment. So she'll be hopefully kidding actually at the same date as me. And then we've got two others which aren't in kid at the moment, called Heliana. They came with their names. Heliana and Heather.
And we had one called P. But
Yes,
P died.
He died sadly. Yes.
Well, if you take the wee one when they're born out and call out Mandy in the morning, you never know, it could be her first word as well, calling you.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's true.
Cool.
So
Well,
true.
thanks so much for the chat. Let me know when the Tap Retreats open so I can come for a cold dip in the pond and then warm up.
Yeah, you would love it. You would love
Yeah,
it. It's a beautiful pond to swim in. It
Yeah.
really is. So yeah, definitely, you're more than welcome.
Cool. Thank you very much. So that's it for episode 6 of the Lay of the Land podcast. Thank you so much to Rosa and James for sharing their inspiring story. I'm certainly going to try and visit the farm in Aberdeenshire to have a go in that heated bath, and it might even inspire me to finally get around to building something similar in the garden. Check out Tapo North Permaculture on YouTube to learn about how James and Rosa run their small farm. If you would like more information about how you might get involved in the way land is owned and used in your area, visit myland.scot for stories, news and case studies for what's happening with the land around you. Join us for the next episode soon.